Immediately, as Matthew likes to say, immediately, he made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, but by this time the boat, battered by the waves, was far from the land, and the wind was against them. And early in the morning he came walking toward them on the sea. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified, saying, "It's a ghost," and they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." And he said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat, started walking on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he noticed the strong wind, he became frightened, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." And Jesus immediately reached out to his hand and caught him, saying to him, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" When they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God."
Please pray with me. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be pleasing to you, O God. Amen. If someone tells you that they like to play golf, would you say to them, "Do you always let someone know where you're going to be?" Or if someone tells you that they like to play tennis, are you going to ask them, "Do you always stretch after your match?" Or if someone tells you that they play basketball, would you say, "Do you always wear ankle braces?" No, of course you wouldn't respond this way. These are all fairly well-known and socially acceptable sports and activities to participate in. Chances are you're not going to start displaying symptoms of a mild cardiac event if somebody tells you that they're a runner or that they like to play golf. However, that's not always the case when people find out that you rock climb. You get much more dramatic responses. You do what? Do you use a rope? Do you wear a helmet? Do you tell someone where you'll be? Do you even love your mother? Yes, I have actually gotten that last one before. But those are the kind of responses that I often get from people when they find out that I climb. And even though it gets old sometimes, I know that people are well-intentioned in their asking. I don't think anybody's asking this secretly hoping, "Gosh, I really hope Austin isn't safe out there and gets really hurt." Or if you are thinking that, please just don't tell me. And I don't believe that rock climbing is some death-defying sport, or even that it's more inherently dangerous than a lot of other sports. But with that being said, it does involve a lot of objective hazards that you don't deal with in other sports, like rocks falling from above, or distance from medical treatment, or exposure to the elements, or the consequences of a fall in a particular situation. So it does involve a lot of risk management, and in a lot of ways, a day spent climbing is a day spent constantly evaluating risks and then making decisions based off those evaluations. Over the last 8 years, I've spent a lot of time climbing, and in turn, a lot of time thinking about risk. Something that I think is especially important for everyone to be aware of is that we all take risks in everything that we do. There's potential for negative consequences for just about anything. Anytime that you get in a car, you could be in a fatal wreck. Anytime that you eat or drink something, you could have food poisoning that leads to serious illness or death. Unlikely, but everything that we do has some element of risk to it. One of the world's most accomplished climbers, Alex Honnold, does engage in a particularly high consequence or risky form of climbing where he doesn't use ropes, and he gets, in pretty much every interview he does, he gets asked about risk. And one of the things that he said that really stuck out to me, this is talking about risk, many Americans risk their health every day through largely avoidable diet and lifestyle choices. When I was 19, my father died from a heart attack. He was a 55-year-old college professor, and had led, by what was all appearances, to be a risk-free life. But he was overweight, and heart disease runs in our family. No matter the risk we take, we always consider the end to be too soon, even though in life, more than anything else, quality should be more important than quantity. What really do we risk in life? Living a safe or risk-free life comes with its own potential fatal consequences. Is death our only risk, or is it our biggest risk? What was Peter risking that day he saw Jesus walking out on the water? What was the risk that he faced when Jesus invited him to step out with him? Maybe we would think that the biggest risk Peter was facing in that situation had something to do with Peter possibly not actually being able to stand on the water. Maybe he would sink down and get wet. Maybe he couldn't swim and would be in danger of drowning. His biggest risk in this bold and out-of-the-ordinary act would have to be something to do with consequences from coming up short and not being successful in it, right? No, the biggest risk Peter faced in that moment was not getting wet or sinking or drowning. The biggest risk he faced was not stepping out of the boat. I believe that those are the biggest risks that we can take. To risk missing out on experiencing the fullness of life. To risk not letting God do something new and miraculous in our lives. To risk not stepping out when Jesus invites us to come. But we really want to be practical and responsible and safe and comfortable. And sometimes, or a lot of the time, we let this get in the way. The boat is a safe, comfortable, responsible, practical place to be. We know what life is like on the boat, and it's much more comfortable on the boat than to step off into the unknown. We like being on the boat. The only problem with that is that Jesus is always calling us to step off the boat. He's never telling us, yep, you just go ahead and stay right there in your little comfort zone, never move, you're just fine right there. No, Jesus is always inviting us to come, to step off the boat into the unknown. Because it is only there that I believe we can truly meet Jesus. It's only when we step out into the unknown that we can start to move past the comfort zones of living in our privilege and then start working towards justice and right relationship with all of our brothers and sisters. That never happens when we always stay on the boat. Jesus wouldn't have invited Peter out onto the water if he didn't think that Peter could do it. This isn't one of those tired, God won't give you more than you can handle cliches. I don't believe that. But what I do believe is that when Jesus invites us to come, he probably has a damn good reason for it, even if we can't see it in the moment. And just like Peter, when we step out of the boat, we aren't always going to be able to stay on top of the water. And that's okay. When we step out into the unknown, past our comfort zones, the sinking and the floundering is every much a part of it as is the walking on the water. You won't always stay on top. Sometimes you are going to get wet. We like to stay on the boat where we're nice and dry. But if we're always dry, then I would argue we're not fully living. We all have boats that we like to stay on, comfort zones that we like to stay in. It might be avoiding a difficult conversation with someone, staying in a miserable yet comfortable, or a whole host of other things. The United Methodist Church, my denomination, the church that I love, was so kind as to provide me with an example this week of what some of these boats are. Back in the spring at General Conference, our Council of Bishops created something called the Commission on a Way Forward, which was to examine all of the denomination's teachings on homosexuality and to try to figure out what to do with the global denomination that is deeply, deeply divided over this. And to form a committee to work on this issue is a very Methodist way of dealing with it. The only thing that could have made it more Methodist is if we have a potluck before we have the commission. This commission can't make any changes to the Book of Discipline, but they are charged with coming up with a plan to present to General Conference where things can be voted on. This commission is made up of 32 people, clergy and laity. Within these 32, The 32 were announced earlier this week. There are 2 gay males and no lesbian or transsexual individuals, which is a problem. Bishop O, the president of the Council of Bishops, did give 8 criteria that they used for selecting these 32. One of these was composition roughly comparable to the U.S. and Central Conference membership of the church. To give them the benefit of the doubt, perhaps this really was done to try to give an accurate representation of the entirety of membership in the United Methodist Church. But even if that is the case, what this also does is preserve the status quo of who's at the table. In choosing, whether directly or indirectly, to not include the voices of more LGBTQ persons, the people who are most affected by what this commission is examining, the council has limited the rights of LGBTQ people in determining how the United Methodist denomination is going to seek to move forward. This is the definition of systemic oppression. The Methodist Church chose to not step off the boat this week. Perhaps this was because they saw the risk in this situation to be the risk of not preserving our institution, the risk of our denomination dying or splitting. But in choosing the 32 people that they did or did not for this commission, what they have risked is the opportunity to move towards a more just and inclusive church, an opportunity to use their position to courageously lead us forward in a more life-giving direction for the people that we too often leave on the margins, an opportunity to give those who are most impacted by the current policies on homosexuality a more prominent voice at the table, and an opportunity to inspire hope in the lives of countless people around the world who so desperately want to see the church act like it is more concerned with love, reconciliation, and doing the right thing than it is concerned with preserving the status quo or preserving the institution. This is what the Council of Bishops risked this week. This is what it looks like when we stay on the boat. Is the biggest risk not preserving the institution of the United Methodist Church? Or is the biggest risk not fully pursuing the love and justice that God calls us to live in? I'm pretty sure that Jesus told us to love our neighbor as ourselves, not to love our institution as ourselves, or to love the status quo as ourselves. We in the Methodist Church continued to stay on the boat this week. Perhaps we've stayed on a boat that's already sinking anyways, but I still have hope that we can do better. The good news is that Jesus is always, always inviting us to step off the boat. Just because we missed out and didn't step off this time doesn't mean that we won't have another opportunity to step off into the unknown, that place where we can truly meet Jesus. Jesus is going to keep inviting us to step out onto the water with him. And the risk isn't in getting wet. The risk is not stepping off the boat in the first place. I invite you all to re-examine the risk that you're facing and to take another step this week towards stepping off one of your boats. And also maybe help encourage the people around you and organizations in your life to step off their boats and support them in that journey. Because if the events within the Methodist Church this week are any indication, we all need a little bit more help to step out of our comfort zones into that place that Jesus invites us to. Amen.